We'd like to thank everybody for joining us again for the Culture of Agriculture. I'm Brent Rigby. I will be your host today. And today we have a special guest with us, Eric Webb with Heglar Creek Farms. Thank you for coming and joining today.
Glad to be here. I'm excited. This is going to be great.
Beautiful day.
Oh, yeah. This is a crazy spring.
Yeah, it has been, hasn't it?
I mean, knock on wood, we haven't had the wind.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know why I say that. Yeah, we've had the rain, but
which is not normal for us.
Every day I go outside, I'm like, where are we living? Like, this doesn't feel like Southern Idaho.
Maybe spring hasn't got here yet.
Yeah, maybe not.
I always say you can tell when spring gets here when the wind blows.
Mm-hmm, exactly right.
Well, Eric, could you tell us a little bit about your operation to get started? And I know you're in many different aspects. 5 generations, headed to 6 is what I understand.
Fingers crossed that the 6th coming back.
I bet they do.
Oh, yeah.
You got them started good.
Oh, yeah. They're
And it sounds like they enjoy cows. They enjoy farming.
Yep. They enjoy it all.
Yeah.
They just like being out, right? Like all the young kids. So, yeah. So, I'm Eric Webb. I'm a 5th generation dairy farmer. Started in 1891. Great grandpa started a dairy farm down in Bluffdale, Utah. And we, in the 80s, or the 70s, sorry, my dad, getting crowded out in Utah, which we all know Utah
just keeps growing.
Keeps growing, which is a benefit to one of our companies now, the sod industry. But they moved up here in the middle of nowhere, Raft River, Idaho. And probably not a lot of people even in Idaho know where that's at. Yeah. But if you're driving, between American Falls and Burley, and you see that one dairy right on the freeway, that's not us. We're down in the valley about another 5 miles. So, but that's Raft River Valley. My grandpa had a brother, and they had 4 sons each. And we had that dairy by the freeway, and the kids were starting to grow up, and they realized they had to split. So they split, and so then that was my dad, and they kind of started a dairy farm just in the valley a little bit, and one thing led to another, and we milk right now. We milk about 2,200 cows. We have kind of a conventional dairy, and then we have a robotic dairy, which is robots 100% milk the cows.
So when you're saying kind of a conventional and robotic, so you're not doing all of the cattle that way, or you're doing
so we have about 1,300 on our conventional dairy, which is a double parallel, which, you from the movies or whatever else you see, you go and see the milkers putting on the milk, milking the cows. And then just up the hill on the other side of the road, we just built, about 5 years ago, built a robotic, and it's pretty wild. And I invite anyone to come see it. But the cows, they have all their food, all their water. They have water beds. They have back scratchers. Yeah, I mean it's a spa for these cows, and then whenever they feel like it, they come up to what we call the lobby area, and there's 3 robots. They go in the robot. The robot reads an RFID tag, knows what cow it is, milks it, sends it on the way, gives it some pellets, which is a source of energy, and send the cow on the way. So you go on there, it's quiet. These cows are just like
they're just
content. Yeah. Don't bug me. Yeah. So,
have you seen as far as production? I guess that's interesting.
It was interesting. It took probably 3 or 4 years to kind of refine it and get it better and better. But we are probably about the same production as we are at our conventional dairy. The difference is we have 0 labor. I mean, we have a dairy manager, and he is a stud, and he's got those robots just working day and night for him, doing whatever he wants. So. If something's wrong, robot will send you a text in the middle of the night. You go fix it, and then you're on your way again. So, yeah, production's about the same, but there are a lot of savings in the robot barn. So
and they probably kind of look at the cow and what it produces a little bit, and then according to that is some of the feed. I mean, some of the nutrition.
Yep. It'll individualize the ration for the cow. It'll know how long that cow will be in there. Like there's some cows that will produce, 130, 140 pounds a day. Well, they'll let that cow keep coming back. And then the cows that are producing 60 to 70 pounds, they say, don't come in yet. And so if a cow tries to come in, it'll just let it back out because it knows it needs to wait a little bit longer.
Needs to have a little bit more time.
If there's a cow that's, throws a red flag, whether it's movement or rumination or anything, our gates automatically open up, and they go into a little holding pen for in the morning. So then when you get there in the morning, it'll tell you what cow had what problem, and then you kind of diagnose and fix.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Yeah.
Wait, 30 years ago, would you have thought?
No. I mean, probably not even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like
the industry is changing so much right now.
Well, in every aspect, right? I mean,
Yeah.
farming,
Oh.
you see it in
Yes.
Sputnik, but yeah, it is wild what technology is doing. And I think, probably the biggest difference, like when I think of my grandpa, where he started and where he ended up, right? Like getting the horses out and plowing the field
Yep.
to where before he passed away, he was driving an auto steer tractor,
Yep.
falling asleep. And there's one time he fell asleep. He was discing or something and just annihilated a tower on a pivot.
Oh, no.
And he didn't even know until he turned around and came back. He's like, what happened to that pivot?
Tractor just kept on going, didn't it?
Tractor kept going. So stay awake out there. But yeah.
Well, the day's coming to that. I suppose we'll have
Yep.
automation. And you
Yeah.
have a little of that
Yeah.
on your farm now.
Yeah. So, I mean, the robots surely are a part of that as the autonomous. Maybe a little backtrack some of the other businesses we have. So we have the dairy, and then we have a feedlot where we custom raise beef animals for a company called Riverbend. And then we custom raise baby calves for the surrounding dairies and other feedlots. Mm-hmm. And so we have about 8,000 baby calves there.
Now, said something about bottle feeding.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you're bottle feeding all this.
Yeah. That's a lot. I mean, we probably have, I would guess about 1,200 to 1,500 on bottles, right? So they'll 2 times a day they'll send these guys out and bottle feed, and then after that they'll go give them their electrolytes, their Gatorade, because they got to keep
going.
yeah. So
I remember feeding 5 or 6.
yeah.
I thought that was
Growing up, that was my job, right?
Yep.
Feeding baby calves, and that was amazing. That was such a great childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had to move hand lines and I had to feed baby calves.
That's right. Life was good.
And yeah, it's so great. And you think back, like the space we're at now and how big we are, my kids can't go do that. And that's what's kind of hard. Now I got to find other things for them to learn the value of hard work. And
we have automated a lot of things now, and because of the size.
Right.
I think if we were still smaller, like what we were back then,
and there's still some, like I've got other family on my wife's side of the family that their kids still are heavily involved, and I think that's kind of a pro and con of our size is like, yeah, we're great, we're growing, and we're trying to be progressive, but now I got to find these other things for my kids to do, and they're still young, but. Yeah, you got to raise them in more technology and stuff. Like, instead of go milk the cows, go check on the robots, right? Like, It's kind of weird. So,
but you're still checking on the cows.
Yeah, we're still checking on the cows.
But the exciting part of that is that we've got that younger generation that's excited to come up here, and that's what we need. That is farming, because I would say over the last 20 some odd years, farming kind of got the point is, you know what? We're farming, go find a different job.
Right.
And we need that back.
Yeah, we need a lot of people back. And that's what I'm seeing, like our operation. We have about 260 employees total. We have a lot of employees. And I guess I'm going to backtrack again. Sorry, I keep going. I keep going. And then it's really exciting to me. So, but along with all the cattle operations, we have a sod farm. We have a trucking company. We have an electric company, and then we have a plumbing company. So, and then little businesses here and there. We have some real estate investments. We have a software company that we're working on. So, a lot of crazy things. We have a lot of wild ideas. We're kind of like that. But with all those companies, about 260 employees, and finding help gets really tough. Right.
So when you say on your 260 employees, what is the dairy probably the biggest?
Between the dairy and the electric company.
Those two.
Yeah, we have close to 80 employees at the electric company.
And you kind of play with the robotic side with the electric company, don't you?
Yeah.
From what I
Yeah, so our electric company, it is, I mean, the reason we started it was because my brother had a huge passion and desire for it. And we'll get into this a little bit later about kind of how we all came back to the farm and why we're so the way we are, diversified. But yeah, he had a huge passion for it, and we always saw a need for it just in our operation alone. And so, you know, he came back, he was the only electrician we had, you know, then he hired one guy and two guys, and now we have, you know, 60 plus journeymen. And, you know, we're into commercial and industrial, but our roots are ag, right? And so our whole robot barn, they wired everything. Like, they do it all. And it's fun to kind of be a part of the whole process from beginning to end.
Yes.
So
then you understand it.
Yeah.
And if you have a problem, it's easier to track down.
So now, call my brother, like, hey, I'm having this problem. It's easier for him for me, instead of just getting frustrated, throwing my hands in the air, you know, I'd call him. He could get frustrated and throw his hands in the air.
But at least you're together on that.
Yeah, we're together. So yeah, so that's all the businesses we have, and yeah, we could dive into how we.
Oh, let's do that. The one thing that's kind of exciting for this month, it's the big dairy month.
Yeah,
we're kind of celebrating that.
Isn't that great?
Oh, I think it is. It's wonderful.
I hope.
The thing is I still think education is key.
Yeah.
And I think that's some of the reason that we've kind of started doing a little bit of the podcast
here
with what we're doing is to kind of let other people know and understand what we do in the ag community.
Yeah, it is wild to me, you know, how small of a group we are in the ag world, in the dairy world, and who's feeding people the information out in the world, right?
Normally it's not.
It's not us.
Yes.
And I'm, you know, this excites me that you have this going on. And there's been lots of times I've got friends outside of ag quite a bit. And you ask them questions about ag and they're like, oh no, it's this, you know, this is how you do it. And I'm like, where are you getting your information from? Right. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I was on a TV show last year, and there was 12 sets of families on this TV show. And during breaks, we would all get together and we'd be having a good time, and they'd say, oh, Farmer Webb, you know, tell us something about ag, you know? So I would say, okay, great. You know, who here, and I'm not against organic, just so you know, right. I think there's a need for it. I think that's awesome, but I just trying to educate. Said, who here, you know, drinks organic milk? Everyone. All other, you know, 11 families were, oh yeah, these are all the parents. You know, I'm like, that's great. I love that. That's amazing. Tell me why, you know? Well, you know, the hormones that you put in conventional milk is terrible for you. And I'm like, okay, so like what hormones are you talking about? Like BSD? Like, yeah, like BSD. And I'm like, yeah, that hasn't been happening for like 25, 30 years, right? They're like, what? No, what? Yeah. You know, and it's like...
It's the education part.
It's the education. And so I'm like, yeah, that hasn't happened. Well, you know, what about antibiotics, right? Like, well, let me tell you how the process works when we have to deliver milk. The milk truck driver gets there. He tests the milk then. They test the milk when they get to the plant, and they test it one more time. So it gets tested 3 times. If there's any trace of any of that, you have to flush it, and you don't get your milk check. So we're very proactive on making sure none of that happens. We have to pull, you know, cows out of the herd if they're sick or whatnot. And so they're just like, oh, I can't believe that. That's so crazy. By the end of it, everyone's like, so conventional milk's not that bad? I'm like, you tell me. I told you this is coming from the horse's mouth, right? Yep. You know, and I you know, we have an organic dairy right next to us, and great people love them. And they have to graze, you know, part of the requirements, they have to graze, and it's hard to keep weeds down. Right. So those cows are grazing on weeds. They're grazing on grass too. But, you know, I kind of just gave the example, like, well, our cows get full balanced milk, right? They get their meat, their protein, starches, anything that they need to be a good producer. And that's what we want as humans, right? Like, we want to eat healthy. We should eat healthy, I guess. Yeah. I don't say we always do.
Well, you got to have that one or two times.
Yeah, you gotta enjoy life a little bit. But you see these cows out grazing on just this kosher weed, right? Like, well, that's like us eating Twinkies or whatever, right? So I'm like, you know, tell me what is best for the cow.
Yeah, that balance.
Yeah, You got to have balance.
Ration and balanced nutrition.
And like I said, and I have nothing against organic. I think organic's needed out there. But the reason price is so high in organic is because yields are low.
Yes. The production's not there.
Yeah, it's not there. And so it's not because it's superior, in my opinion. And this is, gospel according to Eric, right? So everyone has their opinion. But in my opinion, there's a need for both. There's a need for all of it. But we need to educate people on
what's really happening out there.
Really happening, yeah.
Yep.
And
that probably, with that discussion that you had there, they probably went home with a whole different mindset of saying, oh, maybe this is okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of my best friends in Texas, met him up in Rexburg when he was going to school there, and he was all organic, his family, and they're in Texas, and I had this discussion with them. And since then, they stopped drinking organic, and they're like, dude, it's just good. Like, we've had no problems with it. And I'm like, great, glad to see, right? And it was just the education.
It is.
And that's so important. I mean, that's, we have a social media page, right? We pay a gal to post contents every day to educate people.
And I noticed that. That was exciting to go in there and see. You have different aspects of what's happening.
Yeah, and we're very passionate about educating people. I mean, it would be really easy not to hire her, right? Yeah. And not do anything. It'd be cheaper for sure, but we're so passionate about ag that we need to do something. We need to educate people.
We probably ought to put a plug. It's under Heglar.
Yeah, Heglar Creek Farms.
Heglar Creek Farms.
Yep, that's our one.
Facebook. I know the one.
Yep,
that was
Facebook and Instagram.
Facebook and Instagram.
And then Raft River Sod's the other one. So it's.
I thought it was pretty neat when I went in there and looked at that.
That's
fun to see some of those videos. You got the kids in there.
Oh yeah,
the cows.
It's great. Yeah. She does an amazing job. She's she went to school for ag, and her husband was a state patrolman down in Arizona. So they moved down to Arizona, and she still wanted to be involved in ag. So we got connected, and she comes up. She does all the pictures. She does everything, and she does a phenomenal job. She does so great, and it's based on education, right? Because we need more of that.
Yes. Well, it's because you're not around it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I would say, even manufacturing.
Yeah.
Until I kind of started working here, I farmed for a number of years and then was selling for John Deere for quite a while.
What a stud.
And you come here and you go, manufacturing's different.
Yeah.
You start to learn different things.
Yeah.
Farming's the same way.
Right.
If you're not around it, you don't
understand.
And don't get that from the people that are involved.
And that's, I think that's so important. For everyone listening, it's do your part to share your story. Connect. Yep. I mean, it's getting really big. Farm to fork is getting really big, right?
Yes.
People want to know where their food's coming from. They want to know how things are made. And so tell your story, because someone else will. Someone's going to tell a story.
Well, it's kind of like what you talked about being out there on the TV deal.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you go through an interview, time-wise,
right?
I mean, unlike what we're going to talk about today, this is all going to be published,
right? Of
what we're talking about, but they have segments that they have to hit, and so a lot of times when you tell a story, you get a certain segment, maybe not necessarily everything that you would like to get out there in that time fashion.
Yeah, I think the big thing for us and for the ag community is I think we have a good outreach in our area, but like reaching out even further to the people that like are in big cities and whatnot. Like, and I don't know how to do that. I think we'll get there, but it's hard.
Well, and I think it takes stuff like this.
Yeah.
Different things to get out there on a positive note.
Right.
Because usually when you're in the news, it's a negative note.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So. Don't look up my name on Google. No, just kidding. You can, I think.
We'll be good.
So that's, that's kind of our story as far as why we tell our story is.
You bet. And so you can educate and they understand what we're doing and what we're about. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's very true. Someone will tell your story if you don't tell it for yourself.
And I go back to kind of the pandemic in the ag market. And there's quite a few markets that didn't stop either.
Right.
I mean, but you don't stop.
Business as usual.
You have the cows that need to be milked and things, and the farm has to keep going, and we have to keep building equipment.
Sure.
That side, we didn't have a choice to stop.
No, there was no relaxation.
Which I thought was good.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what I would do.
I kind of like to eat.
Yeah.
And I do like milk.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Eat all the dairy products you can.
That's right.
But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and hopefully people realize that, right? Like essential workers like ag, truckers, right? I mean, they're very important people, and you need to thank them, and you need to learn about them. And so that I think that's so important to keep in our, because it could get burdensome, right? Like,
oh, yes. Well, I go back, we thank all those people because
yeah,
you don't work an 8 to 5 job.
right.
Especially in the dairy world. It's 7 days a week, 24
Right.
hours a day.
You're harvesting every day.
Things are going.
Yeah.
And agriculture just is that direction.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other jobs that are too.
Yeah.
But agriculture is one of those
Yeah, it
neat
doesn't
areas
stop.
that, like you said, we're basically about, we used to be about 1% of the, was it 2%? And then we dropped down to about 1%.
Yeah, 1.5, yeah, about there.
Somewhere in there. And so there's not a lot that are actually in production ag.
Right.
And so we have to tell that story a little bit.
Yeah.
We're back 30, 40 years ago. There was a bunch of us
Yeah.
in that side.
And that's, yeah, like I said, that's a challenge. 1% trying to reach the other 99.
Yes, and being such a vital role in everybody's life because we all like to eat. So.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we do. So.
Well, maybe a little bit about how you guys, I mean, as far as who's all kind of
in the business,
business and
sure.
Kind of how I know that you came, when you were working in there, you did do a little bit of something different before you came back to the farm. Kind of jumped out of it for a minute and then came back in.
Yeah, so a long time ago, my dad and uncles, came up with kind of some rules of entry. Like if you want to come back to the farm, which I think is very important, if you want to come back to the farm, we need you to accomplish X, Y, Z. Part of that was getting an education. Part of that was, outside work, and then bringing something back to the business. And so, my story, so I went to Utah State. And
You're
then
an Aggie?
I'm an Aggie. Love it. Got my degree in ag business. Went and did some grew potatoes. Actually, my only potato stint in my life, my career, was actually in Michigan. I left Idaho to go all the way to Michigan to grow potatoes. Isn't that wild how that works? But, I think we get placed in certain places for a reason. Walther Farms was out there, and I think they're here now too.
Yes, they are.
And you want to talk about a family business that is all about faith, family, and farm. I mean, it's them. They're an amazing company, and they've done really well with. They're a third generation farm. So I did that for a while, and then after I graduated college, I went down to Cedar City, Utah, and I was a rep for. Well, I guess I came back to the farm for a few years because I was just so passionate about coming back. But I don't think the farm was quite ready for me to come back, right? I mean, we still had all the roles filled and everything. And so I left and I went to Cedar City, and I was a rep for Staley West, which is a hay steamer. Okay. I don't know if you've maybe not seen them. You don't do a whole lot of hay on this side of the state. But these hay steamers, instead of waiting until 3 or 4 in the morning when you get your due, you could go anytime. It'll steam your hay, and
probably then, some of the explanation on that is, hey, if you bale it too dry.
Yep, all your leaves where your nutrients at.
Nutrients and that.
Yep, they fall off. So most farmers wait till 3 or 4 in the morning. They'll go out and they'll bale, and because you need that dew moisture, and then you bale hay and hopefully put up a great crop. Well, this steamer, you pulled between the tractor and the baler, and it would steam hay as you're picking it up. It would keep the leaves on there, make a great bale.
And you could bale all day long.
And you could bale a long time, yeah.
Because in the past, when the dew went off in the morning,
yep, you were done.
Yep. And you had to wait till...
And if there's a storm coming, that's really beneficial.
Oh, yeah.
Especially a spring like this, right? It's just so wet.
Yes. You started cutting hay?
Yeah, we did. We've started cutting, and... that's just how it goes. You cut hay, it rains.
Yeah,
right.
It's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee. So just expect it. We weren't trying to work around storms. We just said just cut the hay. It's going to rain no matter what.
It's time. And boy, this year's crop looked. I mean, as far as a cool spring.
Oh, it looked
crazy. Really good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got off topic on that.
Yeah. So yeah, after spending some time there, our neighbor who owned a sod farm, his health was kind of declining and he needed a liver transplant, and his son didn't want to be part of the business. And so he asked if we wanted to buy it, and we wanted to buy it for the farm ground. Mm-hmm. We just, think it's very important, and very rarely do you have an opportunity to buy your neighbor's farm.
Exactly.
So we bought it, and we said, well, it's got the sod farm attached to it. Do we want to give this a go? And my dad gave me a call and said, hey, maybe this is an opportunity. Thing I love ag, and I love customer relations. I love working with people. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, maybe this is a great fit. So came back, ran the sod farm. That first year we sold probably about 3 million square feet of sod, which is about 70 acres. And it was pretty good. I mean, that was pretty average for what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And to give you what we do now, which is pretty remarkable, in the month of May, we did 3 million in 1 month of square feet.
That's
it's wild.
That market is really great.
Yeah,
you kind of mentioned that early on.
Yeah. So everything goes to Salt Lake, and we're glad to give it to Salt Lake. We want the growth to happen down there.
You're keeping them green.
Yeah. And so when I moved back, I was a sod manager for probably 5-6 years, and there's one thing I'm very passionate about is growing a business, giving quality products to people, and so and the other thing that kind of benefit is the housing market. I mean, plain and simple, it's boomed, and when that does good, sod farms do fairly well. And so that kind of grew in kind of that time frame. We were sending all our trucks down, delivering sod, and we were coming back empty. And I'm like, man, where's the opportunity here? Yeah. Right? So we started looking and found backhauls that were coming to Twin Falls, Idaho Falls area. And I'm like, oh, it's perfect. So we started a trucking company. And, that's been great. It's been a lot of fun to be a part of. It's kind of interesting in the sod world. Your neighbors aren't quite your friends. They're your competitors. And the first time I started, when I first started that sod farm or took it over, I called the neighboring sod farm in close by. I won't say where, but very close by. And I said, hey, we just took over the sod farm. You mind if I come and kind of ask you some questions? And he told me to take a hike. You're right. And I'm just like, oh, this is a little different, right? With dairy or hay or anything else, right? You just call your neighbor, hey, what are you doing here? Oh, we're doing this, right? Yeah. Very friendly. Yep. So I had a quest to go find someone that would help me. And I finally found someone in Denver, Colorado. Oh, wow. And I went there and I, took lots of notes. And I feel like that's what helped us become good, is getting the right people, knowing the right people that will help you. To skip some of those, sometimes those lessons heartaches that you... And we definitely did have those, right? I remember, my knowledge of turf coming into the sod farm was very limited.
you mowed the grass?
Yeah, mowed it, watered it, a couple fertilizer applications. And it is not like that in mass production sod farming.
It's a lot more intense.
Yeah. And I remember one spring, right when spring turned to summer, it got really warm, we had this massive grub problem. And I wasn't ahead of it. I shipped a ton of loads down. And, man, I paid for that one because everyone's like, what's happening here? This grass isn't. So I had to go and pay for everyone's lawn to get sprayed down in Utah. Oh, man. It was... And those are good learning experiences, right? Because
yes, you remember.
We've never done that since. Because
it seems like when you make that type of not necessarily a mistake, but that kind of a situation that you have to cure.
Yeah,
it comes to mind, and you do things differently.
And I think that's how we learn. Unfortunately, that's how we learn a lot of things.
It is.
It's crazy. It's like someone could tell me, like, "Hey, don't do this," and you're like, okay, whatever, we'll not do it, but you don't really take it to heart until it happens to you. That's right. And then you're like, oh man, this is what he means by that.
It cements it in.
Yep. And so we've definitely had our struggles, but it's been overall been really great, successful. And then it got to the point where we had some transitioning. So our rules of entry. I did all the things I was supposed to, came back, and you have to work on the farm a certain amount of time before you actually become an owner, which I think is really great. Kind of for you to see, for them to see, like if you're really got your heart in it, you're going to be a good partner. Yep. But after we got to that point, we were in the process of buying out my dad and my uncles, and I just realized that there's going to be someone that needs to be watching over the farm. And I couldn't do it all. And so we kind of set out to find great managers. And man, we've been really lucky, and we have some of the best managers. I believe in my heart that there's not much better than them. So we have a great sod manager. We had a really good trucking manager, and he was amazing. He grew our trucking company, but then just last year he went to go work for his family farm, which the call comes, right?
Yeah. I mean, and you can't blame him.
You can't blame him
because.
But what I love about those people that we hire is there's never any animosity, any hate. Like still to this day, I talk to him a couple times a week. We meet up for lunch, and we have a great relationship. And those are the kind of people you want, right? Like not the people that when they leave or you're mad about it or they're mad about it. And so a big part of what we have is our managers, right? So we have all these companies. We physically can't take care of all of them ourselves. So we hire the right people. And we almost, for lack of better words, we kind of let the reins loose on them. We say, you go at it, right? And I remember, through my whole career, like the leaders that were my bosses, the ones that kind of were there as a supporting role instead of micromanaging and saying, no, do it this way. Like, I love those guys. Those are amazing. And I've always kept that in my mind. And so what we try to do is the same thing. We just say, listen, this is your baby. You take care of it. And they've done a really good job.
Well, they take some ownership that way.
Yeah, they really do.
And they have some different ideas.
Oh, yeah. And I think, part of it is for ourselves is being kind of trying to be humble enough to be open to those ideas. Yes.
Yep.
For example, our farm manager, our conventional farm, so not our sod farm, but he, we played around with biologicals for quite a bit, and we always have because we love becoming better. Yep. And he has now taken it to a whole new level, right? And we have seen huge benefits. And so, we almost on our conventional farm no-till everything, and we're seeing some big results, like less synthetic fertilizers, higher yields, water retention. Like
it doesn't happen overnight.
No. Oh no. I mean, it's we've been testing and playing around with it for probably 5 years now. And it is fun to see, right? Like our farm manager now is got his own little lab in our pivot shop that he's like testing different mushrooms on,
to see if that'll
beneficial fungicides or all that stuff. But yeah, he's doing great. And, we're spending probably 20-30% less time in a tractor going across the field, which adds huge. Up. Yep. We're probably down 20% in our fertilizer inputs.
Which, with the inputs of fertilizer the last few years,
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
Yep. So if you think about all that stuff, and it's because he had that, if we were to just say, and that's kind of hard in traditional farming. It's like, we've done this for 50 years. This is how we do it.
Yes, we're kind of trenched in that.
Yeah, and it's hard to get out of it. But we realize, that we always need to be learning. We always need to be becoming better. Yep. And he's just kind of had free range of it. And it's cost us some money, to get into it. We've spent a fair amount to do some research and development, but it's all paid off.
Yes. Well, and I think the old tradition, and it's no different than the dairy, the farming, any of that, we get locked into, we know that works.
Right.
And our checkbook to survive hinges around that.
Correct.
And so you make a move or you change something, And if it doesn't work, that affects the checkbook really quick to be able to continue to move. So you get a little, we get so entrenched in tradition that sometimes we don't step out of that because of some of those issues.
Exactly.
But once we do, it's kind of neat to find some different avenues.
Yeah. And so, you know, for example, our corn and trit rotation, we'll go in, you know, we planted our trit right, so it's kind of a cycle. So we'll grow our corn, we'll chop it, we'll plant trit right into that. We won't till it, we won't do anything, we'll just plant right into it. In the spring, we'll chop it, green chop it for our cows, and then plant corn right into that. Like, we're not disrupting the soil.
It's keeping something growing in that ground all the time.
And anytime you run tillage through that, you kind of set back on your biology. Yeah. Every time.
You're probably seeing your organic matter.
Oh, organic matter's going big.
And organic matter is huge. It's interesting.
Very big.
Playing in the precision ag game when I was always watching soil maps and we were doing all that. You'd look at your yield monitors. Yep. And then you'd look at your soil tests and the N, P, and K didn't relate to that. But boy, the organic matter did.
Yep. Exactly.
So, and you're probably seeing that now as you're with the ground being there.
Yep.
The tilt of that soil is a lot nicer.
It's getting
water holding capacity is better.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, in a high desert and the water issues we have, you need to find a way to get better.
Yeah, here in southeast Idaho and through there, we have some of those water issues that water just doesn't infiltrate.
Right. So. Yeah. So we're figuring it out. We're not the best, but we're learning, and I think that's important.
But I think in the agricultural environment, I think we're always evolving.
Right.
We're always learning, and if you stop, then you go backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So, yeah, so that's I think we've kind of gone on quite a few different tangents here. I don't even know where we're at, but
well, and maybe kind of talk a little bit about you talked about you jumping into it.
Yeah,
and then you got brothers.
Yep.
That are involved, and partners.
Yeah, so I have two brothers that are back. One runs the electric company, and that's been really amazing. Honestly, it's been really beneficial, especially like when the dairy market is on a downhill.
Then that kind of picks up.
That picks up. That, I mean, offsets, right? And growing up, you either lose money or you're making money, but there's these huge cycles, and you just try to make it through. And if you can, then there's an upside,
That comes
and what we've seen about every 5 years, you could turn a pretty good profit in the dairy industry. But 4 years, you got to make it through.
You got to survive that.
And so, and part of that is your price takers, right? Like whatever the price is, that's what you get.
Because you're not necessarily setting that price.
And so, we wanted to kind of have a little bit more control of that. So we wanted to be price makers. And so we started the electrical, we started the sod, and we knew we wanted to make a margin. So whatever our costs are, we add the margin onto it, whether that's 10 to 30%, and we know we're going to make money. It could be a little bit, it could be a lot, but we're still making money. And so, so my brother, Justin, he's been doing a phenomenal job at that. Once again, we have great people in there to just really kill it and do a good job. My other brother, Josh, he's involved in the cattle side of things. So he kind of helps with anything to do with animals, which...
So more of the feedlot.
Yep, the dairy.
The cow calf.
Which, bless his heart, it takes a strong soul to do that.
Yes, it does. You got to really love animals, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And it definitely tests his patience quite a bit.
Yes, animals can do that once in a while.
They said the only time you're allowed to swear is when you're working with animals. But
yes, a dairyman has that right.
Yeah, we have that right.
Yeah.
So we're all back. And we've learned from this past transition from my dad and my uncles to us, like how we want to see it in the next. And we've kind of set up a structure to where everyone's got responsibilities, right? Like you get paid on your job title, like your job responsibilities. It's not just you come into the farm and you get a check.
This is where you're at.
Yep. Do whatever you want and you'll get the same check. And so we've really kind of fine-tuned it a little bit to say, whatever position you want, great, let's go for it. And you get paid according to that position. If you just want to be, a tractor driver, that's all you want to do, then great. We're very happy for you. And that's a great thing. Less stress, right?
Yeah.
And you'll get paid accordingly. And so,
as long as you stay awake and don't hit the pivots.
Yeah, you can't do that. That's pretty costly. But when Grandpa does it, it's fine. He's paved the way quite a bit, so he deserves a few pivots. So, but
he gets that pass.
Yeah, he does get a pass. Everyone else, you don't get a pass. So we've set up a structure, and we're very big on accountability charts, which is not as a big thing in farming as other industries. It's just you come and you work.
Yeah.
But when we got to the size we are, we realized we have to have something.
You needed some of that structure to keep things.
Yep. Everyone needs to be accountable to someone.
Yes. And
we read a lot of books. We love reading. We love learning. And from what we've learned, a manager or even a someone who's in charge of other people, 4 to 8 people is about where you want them. Mm-hmm. If you get more than that, it kind of gets out of control. So we've set up our structure to be that way. And it's really worked really good. And part of it is accountability. The other part is I can't go to 260 employees every day and say, hey, thank you so much for what you do, because I do love every single one of them. But I can't.
Realistic. And to get stuff done.
And so we want to have those guys relay messages or show appreciation, and it works really good. So we have an accountability chart. Something we just started last year was a thing called EOS, and it's an entrepreneurial operating system. It's how you run your meetings. It's how you set goals. It's how you do everything. And so we started that. We have a coach, and man, we've seen huge benefits
on that.
Yeah. I mean, our meetings are more effective. Our goals are very, specific in what we're wanting to accomplish. So you have like a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, a 3, and then, a 1, break down to quarters to accomplish all that 10-year goal. So we're trying to hit benchmarks every quarter to hit our 10-year mark.
You know kind of where you're at. That way.
Yep.
Where a lot of times you're just kind of going through.
Yeah. How'd we do?
It looked okay.
Yeah.
We made a little money and.
Yep.
Or we didn't.
Yeah, and that's something we always, one thing that I think that's kind of unique is we share our books with all our managers. Every month we'll bring our managers in, and we go over financials. And I think that's very rare in a lot of companies, because it could be very dangerous. But like we've talked about, we want people to kind of treat it like it's their own. We bring them in and we say, hey, we're either doing a great job and it's broken down. We have an amazing CFO, a controller we have these spreadsheets, and everything's broken down for the industry. So if it's dairy, everything's broken out per hundredweight. If it's the sod farm, everything's broken down per square foot. And so we kind of see every month.
What's your cost?
Yeah, like, oh man, we spent a lot of money in this section, and so we kind of help improve every month.
Kind of tweak that.
Yeah. The dairy one's kind of hard, right? Being a price taker.
Oh, yes.
Like sometimes dairy. I wish we just didn't see our books till the end of the year, because it gets kind of scary. It's just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes a big difference.
So we have and accountability is one of our core values. And people may not like having core values and a mission and a vision, but we think it's very important.
Gives you direction.
It does, and we hire and fire people based and mostly our kind of main people, but we try to put it throughout our whole company. But our core values are humble, being able to take criticism, being able to learn, hungry, that drive, that desire to just become better, smart as in socially smart, like understanding how to talk to people and how to understand how to receive. And the best example I give is my 2 brothers. One's very direct and one's very soft. Like, I wouldn't say soft, but not as direct. So I could go to my brother and we could be very direct. We could even yell at each other because I know that's how he receives it and that's how he gives information. And we could even yell at each other and we walk away great. My other brother, it's like when you want to give information, you don't just hit him with it hard. You kind of, hey, what's your thoughts on this? What do you think about that? And that's kind of about being socially smart. Then accountability, which we talked, everything that's monitored and measured improves every time. And that's why we do what we do. And then team mentality, because we have such a big scheme of businesses.
Yes.
It is very important that everyone...
You're all working for the same
We're
focus.
all working for the same thing. And there's been times like when we started our robot barn, it took a lot of training. And everyone came from every business to help, right? And that's the team mentality we're talking about. And then the last one's positivity. We think that positive is just a very good thing to have.
It's good in the work environment because it keeps you going. You'll drive extra because it's positive.
Yeah. So
the negative side is a tough deal.
Oh, man. And it drags people down, right?
It does, yeah.
And I believe positivity lifts people up. Like you could be in the worst situation, and if you look at it with a glass half full, it can't be that bad. And that takes a lot. And probably I've got an uncle that he's had everything thrown at him that wasn't involved in the farm, but has everything thrown at him that could ever happen in someone's life as far as bad things. And I think the common person would just be a victim and say, this is stupid. But he has been so positive on everything he's done. And I think his life, improves because of that. And I noticed it, I mean, he was probably the main reason why I thought one of our core values should be positive because
of what you saw in him.
We're out in the middle of winter and digging something, right? And he could say something like, "Oh, this brings great exercise to us," right? Like, and it goes from like, "Oh, that's really cold and crappy," to like, "Oh yeah, maybe it's not so bad." So I think that's pretty important to have.
Well, and the other thing, just listening to, is you've got a plan for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You've got a succession plan too. And I think that's in the ag market right now. I get a feeling that some do and some don't. And I think that's big key to making things work. As you start to listen to like the processor side, the end type.
Right.
They're looking for a longevity plan.
Right. Well, and I've seen it, I mean, in farming, really, like succession planning is really hard.
It is.
But I've seen... I've met with a lot of farms where, the dad still owns it and he's probably about 85, 90. The son's still working for him and he's close to getting retired.
Yes.
And he doesn't have anything.
Yeah. And the next one's gone somewhere else.
Yeah. The next one's like, well, I don't want that, right? And I think it's very important to have a succession plan and do it early because it only gets harder. And we've done that. We have a buy, sell, and trade as well, but I've realized that I'm okay with if my kids wanted to pursue a different path, then that's great. I support that, and whoever comes back to the farm, that's who we're selling it to. And we have to be okay with that, and that's what's kind of hard sometimes is just creating a plan and then. And you could probably modify it as time goes on, especially when you start real early. And that's what's nice about starting way early.
Yeah, because then it can.
Yeah, it can modify.
Need to move it a little bit.
Right. Then you kind of, change directions a little bit. But when you're 85, 90, and you have one son in the farm and you have all these siblings not in the farm, that farm most likely is getting sold.
Exactly, because most of them don't want to come back.
Yeah, I don't want to come back. I just want the value of the farm.
They've moved on.
Yep. And I think it's important to do those things really early and go to education sessions about that.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of them out there.
Oh, there is.
I think someone even in our area, Dick Whitman, I think is his name, but he talks about that. And I think it's the state of Idaho put on a conference this last winter.
talk
about that. Mm-hmm. They talked about that, and they talked about mental health, which is very important. I think someone else in your podcast talked about, Mickelson talked about the importance of understanding, like, reach out to your neighbors if you're feeling bad. And I think that's very important too. So
it is. Well, because you can have some pretty up and down in this market. Because, I mean, today looks beautiful this morning.
Yep.
You could have a hailstorm come in
and wipe out your whole crop.
About 4 or 5 o'clock, and you walk out there and nothing's there.
Yeah.
And that's discouraging.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, you work hard to get it to that point.
Well, and in our industry, we see it like, for example, like futures of dairy is down, and you're working really hard for a loss.
Daily.
That's really hard to swallow every day.
So what are you seeing in the market? I mean, you just talked a little bit about it down.
So last year, milk prices were really high. Feed prices were really high. Mm-hmm. But we were able to make it work, and it kind of balanced out. We probably had a little bit of a profit. Mm-hmm. But what we're seeing in the futures is milk prices are dropping. Feed prices are kind of staying the same. And so there is a downturn coming, and it's really hard. Honestly, it is very hard. And to try to figure out,
because those margins are now fluctuating bigger than what they did before.
Yeah, and dairying is very different now than it was. Like, you have to be really tight on being efficient. Yeah, you got to know everything. And some of it is, mass production, like getting more cows. But
that kind of
you can't do that right now. People aren't allowing their contracts to expand. So you're kind of stuck where you're at, right?
And just so that everybody kind of understands, you sell milk by the hundredweight.
Yep.
And so
and you're contracted.
Gallons, it's hundredweight.
Yep. And we're held to that. How much we're contracted. So we ship about 200,000 pounds a day out of here, and you go over that, you kind of get deducted
because it's over your contract.
Yep. And so you don't get these bonuses or whatnot. And so it's really interesting that you're kind of got your hands tied. You got your feed prices where they're at, and a lot of it was corn prices that drove that up. Mm-hmm. And
we're seeing corn soften a little bit. Not much.
Not to the point that we're gonna be okay. I think this year might be a loss, but once again, I'm very glad we're in all the businesses we're at.
You're diversified enough to keep things moving.
Yep, and I think that's what kept us going through some of these hard times. So yeah, that's kind of the dairy market. And
when you're talking costs on it, just so others understand a little bit, what is kind of an average cost right now to get 100 pounds?
So right now we're about $20 and a half dollars per hundredweight is our cost.
To get you've got to get that just to break even.
That's what we have to get that, and right now we're way below that. I mean, 18, 17. I mean, it's just going down for futures. And so your cost, I mean, and there's things you could do, right? Like you could not, change your rations a little bit to get it a little cheaper, but
you still got to produce.
Yeah, you still have to produce.
If they don't produce, you're still going to lose.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of a tricky line you're playing with.
So as far as cost, like you're saying, 20 and a half right now, would you say 4 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Down around 14, 15?
Yeah, 4 years. I remember probably 2 or 3 years ago, it was like 17. And before that, it was about 15. So, yeah, it's just slowly crept up.
And milk was kind of selling, or you were selling for about that 14, 15.
Yeah.
Or a little less there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gone down. I mean, there's been times that it's been $12. And that's hard. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, back... I can't remember if it was in the 80s, there was a dairy crisis, and there was a huge surplus of milk, and the government was pretty much buying out dairies.
Yes, I remember that.
And my grandpa, during that time, everyone was selling out, and my grandpa had a dream one night. He was a very big visionary guy, and he said, we're not selling out, we're building another dairy. So the very next day, he broke ground and started building another dairy, and it benefited, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he saw kind of the writing on the wall that if all these guys go out,
then there's opportunity.
Yep. And that's something we always have to look at is the opportunity and the opportunity cost to do things, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, it's Dairy is interesting.
It is.
It's I'm so proud that I'm a dairy farmer, like a 5th generation dairy farmer. I think that's
a lot to be
said. A very proud thing. And my goal is to not let it end at 5 generations, right? I think that's what pushes me is, man, they've been doing it. 4 generations did it successfully. I better not screw this up.
I've got to keep that going.
Yeah, I got to keep going.
Get that 6th
I don't want to be the one where we all die and we're in heaven. They're like, oh, you're the one that screwed up the farming.
You'd be looking down and going, no, you're not.
Oh, yeah. He's the one, guys. So, yeah. Anyway.
Well, and I think the dynamics of agriculture in the last 20 years has got to where it is a growth.
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't have an X amount of size to get those costs down on equipment, different efficiencies that you had to do.
Yeah, it's wild. And that's something we have to look at every day, right? Like, do we want to grow? Well, we can't. So what do we do, right?
Yep.
And dairy farming is not cheap.
No.
And so you build a robot barn and you try to save on money there. Mm-hmm. And so you always look at things like that, opportunities to either grow or change where you're spending your money. And that's kind of like, I think there was probably a time we could have grown the dairy or diversified. And I've got some great friends in Utah County who have one of the largest dairies in Utah. Mm-hmm. And that's what they chose to do. They just kept growing the dairy, they kept growing the farm, and they're very successful, and that's really good. And we chose to diversify, and it's just interesting to see the difference. And I don't know if one's better than the other.
They both worked.
They both work. Mm-hmm. One thing I've think that we could be better at is when you hear these people that have grown and they focus on one thing and they become really good at that one thing. I think the Mickelson fella said that same thing. I know Walther's like that. Yes. These guys, and so that's where I'm like, oh man, are we like that awesome John Deere tractor, or are we like a versatile tractor that just is not really good at anything but does kind of all of it, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a versatile tractor, but one of our things is we want to invest in the right companies by investing in the right people at the right time, and we try to do that. And I think we've been really good. And there's been some problems along the way, and we've had businesses. I mean, not every business we started has been successful. We've sold some. We used to have a beef process. We would have a meat packing company, and it didn't work. We didn't make money at it, and so we had to sold it out, or I guess we didn't sell it. We just stopped right? Because it wasn't worth anything. And we had a dairy robotic dealership. So all the robots that are in our dairy, we were the dealer for them. Mm-hmm. And we realized that no one was really passionate about it. We thought, we want to see everything from beginning to end, and that's really cool. But we were so busy focusing on other things. We're like, does anyone really have and it's not really making that much money. And it was profitable, but not to a point where it's like,
this is what I want.
This is what we want. Mm-hmm. So we ended up selling it, and we made good money on it. Mm-hmm. And so we always look at those things, and we have to, right? We do. Like, in order to stay alive, you can't just dump money down something just because you're passionate about it or you think it's a great idea. And that's probably my biggest problem is I always have these ideas. That's where we,
I wouldn't say that's a problem, though.
It's very good.
That's good, because if you have the different ideas and that.
Yeah.
You keep advancing and going. Yeah.
Sure.
You might have one that doesn't work, but the next one could hit a home run.
Yeah, it's wild. I'm probably known as the visionary of the group because I have all these crazy ideas. The software company, for example, like we have a software company that we've been working on for probably 5 years, developing the software for sod farmers, and it's just barely coming out. And man, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than what it was. Like, I was told, like, maybe a year you could get this developed. I mean, we're 5 or 6 years into this. And it was just an idea we had. Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually going to be one of our best companies that we have, because just thinking about the growth and technology and everything, right? That's where things are heading.
And you've automated some of the sod farm, haven't you?
Yeah. So on our sod farm, we have robotic harvesters, and it's semi-robotic. So right when I started the sod farm, we were hand stacking the pallets of sod, and now there's a robotic arm that picks up the sod and stacks it all on its own. Puts, when it's full, it drops a pallet on the ground, puts in a new pallet. I mean, we've eliminated quite a bit. We had one harvester. The first year we started, when we did that, 70 acres was 3 million square feet. And now we only have two harvesters, and we're doing 3 million square feet a month. Wow. And so that's what's cool about technology.
Yes.
And
you're able to do more with less.
Yeah. And I mean, this company for these harvesters, they're out of Utah. They're built in Utah. They're called Firefly, and they're a diesel electric. They've got a generator on them. So a lot of the components are electric. And it is, electric is way smooth. Oh, yes. And so they use, their tractors, less horsepower. They don't have the DEF requirements and everything because it's such a small engine. So all that's great. They make a harvester that they're just coming out this year. So not a harvester, a mower, sorry, that is completely autonomous. So you get in the field, you drive it to the field, you set it up on your phone, and it goes off and mows, and it'll text you when it's done. And it's a 20-foot mower, right? It's not a little thing.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like labor issues, everything. And I think people probably don't realize how much we mow the grass. We plant it. So we've planted in the spring. And here about a month and a half, 2 months into it, we'll start mowing it. And we actually won't harvest it till the following spring. So it's about 12 months. Yep. And we need to develop those roots. Like if it was just the top part, we could actually harvest it pretty quick.
But then you don't have a good sod.
Yeah, you don't have good sod. So you have to develop roots down there. And a lot of that is, time, biologicals. When we started the farm, we went from seed to harvest 18 months, and now we're down to about 12. We've actually done one where we planted in the spring and harvested in the fall, which is crazy.
Was it a longer growing season? Is that,
no, it was about the same. It was just kind of some different practices and how we pushed PGRs, plant growth regulators. Like there's things you could do to kind of manipulate grass to do root growth instead of topical growth. And so we test around all the time with that kind of stuff. But yeah, technology. Those harvesters are pretty awesome.
That is pretty.
And anyone's welcome to come to our farm at any time.
And you probably have it on your site.
Yep.
To probably see that in some of your
videos. You can see that.
If you go in there.
But if anyone's passing through the valley, reach out to us. We'd love to have you, and we do it a lot.
Come down and see it myself.
Please come. Yeah, we have people. We have schools that come. Just this last week, I had a FFA group from Cache Valley, Utah, come up and wanted us to get a tour of farm, and people love it. And it's so interesting. I go on these tours and I kind of help people, but then I just, I go up to the robot barn and I kind of pass them off to our dairy manager. And the things I learned still, I'm like, wow, this is cool. And they're like, is this your first time? No, it's not, but it's just crazy the things you learn.
Something else.
Yeah, you keep picking stuff up, and then we go to our calf ranch and you learn about baby calves and how important it is that they get the colostrum within like a couple hours of having, being born, and what it could do if you don't. And man, the things, and it's fun. Man, it's so fun.
It's fun to keep learning, isn't it? And keep going.
Yeah, I think a big thing also, I don't know what our time frame is, but a big thing that we push is culture and culture of agriculture, right?
That's right.
But having a positive work culture is so important. I want people, and I'm not good at it, and we're learning how to be better at it, but for people to show up to work and just be like, man, I wouldn't want to, I love this job. Yeah, it's a lot of hours. It's hard work, but man, these guys really love me. And we're getting better at that. One thing we try to do is every first Friday of the month, we built this big trailer that's a grill. And every first Friday of the month, we'll roll it into the shop and we'll cook hamburgers for everyone. And they love it, right? I think it's little things like that kind of help. And man, it's hard. It's really hard. It's
you get so tied up sometimes in the business and getting things accomplished that you miss some of those small things that
you're just so busy.
mean a lot to the employee.
It does. And we're still refining on what that means. Like there's some people probably, that see those lunches and say, well, yeah, that's great. It's maybe they don't feel as appreciated or something. So we're still trying to refine that to become better because you look at all these other companies outside of ag, right? I mean, a great example is probably Google, right? I had a friend that worked at Google and I went there and I'm like, do these people work? Like it's seriously, it's so crazy. Like I went there and I got so much anxiety because no one was working. There's people outside playing volleyball. There's people taking naps. There's people, they have these huge kitchens that you just go and eat for free or whatever. Like they had all this stuff and that's what we're going against. Like people could go and
it's more of an entertainment.
Yeah. And I get really scared for the next generation to it's really hard to try to entice them to come into ag because we could, pay very competitive wages. We could do that, but it is work. It's hard work.
But you get to be outside.
You get to be outside. It's amazing. Until you experience it, right? You don't really understand how amazing, part of the being on that show, one of the ladies from LA was just like, they did a little clip of our family and whatnot. And that's great, but you can't live that way 365 days a year. And I'm like, I've been doing it for 5 generations. They don't think this is a reality. And part of me is like, yeah, believe that because I want you to stay in LA, right?
Yeah, because if you come, you're going to
take
over what I'm doing.
And I think most of Idaho should thank me because they thought I was some crazy guy and maybe they're not going to move to Idaho now. So this is great. I think I've done my part. I've done my part to help Idaho out.
Well, I've always said if you go to work every morning and you enjoy your job so much that it doesn't feel like work, you've accomplished what you're after.
You never work a day of your life.
That's right. You enjoy what you're doing.
I love that, and I think it's trying to get people on board with that, and just teaching your kids.
And the fun part about the family, I noticed when I farmed, that was the fun part. You did it with your
family.
Whole family. They were there doing it, whereas doing what I do now is a little different.
Right.
Because you don't have your family with you all the time.
I remember the farm was my playground growing up, right? Yep. That was the coolest thing. We put, I don't know if you've ever passed dairies and you see all those tires on the silage pits.
Yep.
Well, we would have them stacked when they're empty, and we'd build these huge forts, right? And it was so fun. I remember one time in a hayfield, the hay got really tall. And I was a little kid, and I started stomping it out and building a little fort. My grandpa came and ripped me a new one. It was so awesome. But, man, those are things that, once again, I want my kids to experience that. And it's a little different, and I'm sure my dad grew up different in his childhood than I did in mine. But the thing I do get to do is I get to say, hey, I'm going to go do this. Who wants to come with me today? Yeah. And the kids love it, right? When my oldest daughter, was probably 4 or 5, I sat in the buddy seat and she learned how to drive one of those big articulating tractors, right? A 9620. Yep. We were tilling something up and she realized what she needed to do. And I was the most proud dad ever, right? Yep. And she did it and she thought that was the coolest thing ever. Yeah. And so I think it's just, we get so busy that sometimes we don't think we have time to bring our kids, but even if they could see you working on a pivot or something, I think that's important to do. And so,
and we always worry about safety as well.
Safety,
but it is great. It's great to have them with you.
Yeah, and safety is a huge thing. I heard of, was it last year? Maybe someone in Cache Valley was in a harvester, a big forage chopper, and got out to do something. His daughter was in it, and the tractor was still running and ran him over and killed him. And so safety is so huge, and it's something I always think about. But do that. Bring your kids with you, but if you get out, shut the tractor off. I know it's kind of inconvenient, but it is so worth it.
That you need to do.
You have to do it. And just as big as tractors are getting and everything else, it's very dangerous. Yep. but it could be one of the coolest things your kids will be able to experience.
Ag is one of those dangerous areas.
It's very dangerous.
I mean, you're around a lot of moving things
Yeah.
and different things that can happen real quick. And
Yeah,
we
I remember when I was in
definitely
Michigan, their pivots there are very, very old. And one guy had the primary, these are pivots that they were leasing, had the primary power going in the bottom end of the contactor instead of the top.
Ooh.
And I was, used to it, and I shut the power off, great, and I went to go pull those out, and I got shocked with 480 volts.
Yeah.
In the middle of Michigan, right? And I just lay there and my heart was hurting. I'm like, I don't know if anyone's going to know if I'm here, if I'm gone, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so be very careful. Like,
Test things.
Take that
the
extra time to do things. I mean, now every time I go behind a pivot or you need to tap with the backside of your left hand or whatever dominant hand, the opposite. When I moved to the sod farm, we had an old well panel, and it was really dark, and I couldn't see where the thing was. So I get down, turn on, and the panel blew up. Right?
Yeah.
Those are scary. I mean,
They're scary
I remember
moments.
that time.
Yes.
Your life flashed before your eyes,
Yep.
and my wife was in the house, and I walked in, and I was pretty much crying because I'm like, I'm pretty sure I almost died.
Yeah.
Right? And so just be so careful. Electricity, equipment, everything's out to get you.
It is.
And just be careful.
We just need to take a little time. We always
Right.
feel like we're in a hurry.
Yeah.
And we got to get
Yep.
that done now.
Yep.
But that little extra time will
Yeah.
save a lot in the back.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you teach your kids about it.
Oh, yeah.
And
they
then
need to understand.
and then that gets better. So
Any kind of closing remarks to kind of shout
No.
out dairy-wise or
You know
anything
what?
like that? Drink milk,
drink milk,
eat ice cream.
eat ice cream, cottage cheese, yogurt, like do it all. I think the biggest thing to take away is like, if you don't know,
Find out.
and find out from a good source. And like I said, we give tours on our farm if you guys want to come visit. But if you really are concerned or want to know where your food comes from, ask the source, whether it's potatoes or milk or even in our sod farm, right? People want to know, like, how is it taken care of?
Mm-hmm.
Just ask. And there's a lot of people willing to do it. And for the farmers out there, be open to teaching. Exactly. I think sometimes it's just like, oh, great, these guys, I don't want to deal with this.
But I think that's where we've got to.
Yeah.
Because we all stayed in our circle so much that we didn't educate on some
right.
of that. So it's key.
And just remember, like, 99% of the world is a big percentage to try to educate. And so, and if we don't, honestly, if we don't tell our story, there's going to be someone that's going to try to for you.
And the problem with that is I can see down the road, if we don't tell a story and keep things moving, we're going to have a hard time continuing to produce what we need to feed the world.
Yep, it's going to get harder, and there's going to be more regulations, and we can do something about it. I really do believe that we can be the voice and change things for our benefit. So
the education is key.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, thank you for your time here with us today.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been wonderful to sit and visit and to learn more about your operation and the key things there.
Yeah.
So we just really
Anytime.
appreciate you being a dairyman.
Wow,
thank you very much for doing all that.
Well, thank you.
Keeping us in milk. Like I said, I'm a milk.
Yep, you got to do it.
You got to have milk.
Yep.
We'd like to thank everybody for joining us today here for the Culture of Agriculture. Have a great day. Be safe, like what we talked about, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.